Hello, hello, Regis Kilbin is the name, and Heroes of the Storm is the game. And today I want to help you master the basics of controls in Heroes of the Storm. If you're a newer player or still growing, there might be some advanced controls in the game you didn't quite realize you could do, and learning those will help you gain an edge and an advantage against opponents and continue to improve as a player. So up first, you can actually cue movement in Heroes of the Storm using the Shift and right-click key. Normally when you move, you'll just head in a standard direction, but you can control your path and cue up movements. I'll make a nice little spiral and we can zoom in and you'll see that line there that I'm taking. So this can be useful, say you want to you're standing here and you want to head down to this bruiser camp, but you don't want to path along the right because you're worried an enemy might be there. So if I just click the normal way, he's going to path around the right no matter what I do. If I cue my movement action, I can actually go like this and still look around and do other things and be focused while Malfurion makes his way there. So this essentially just gives you a little bit of a finer touch when you're moving through the game and more control over your actions, and you don't have to rely on the bad pathing that sometimes occur and can even get you killed. You can also right-click through the minimap in this game. You'll notice right now that as I right-click on the minimap, my character heads to a point just underneath the minimap. It ignores minimap collision. If I had clicked on the minimap, he would have ran way over here, right? So that's an option that you can find if you go to the Escape menu, Options, Gameplay. You can toggle on and off right-click through the minimap, and you'll see if I turn that off, when I click over here, Malfurion starts heading this way where the minimap would indicate. So depending on your preference, that's something that's handy to know. Also, I want to talk about casting abilities and how sometimes if you're not careful, you can break your movement direction and turn around while casting ability. So let's imagine I'm running away from a butcher, right? He's over here and I'm running to the left, and I want to cast a root. But oops, I cast it out of range, and Malfurion actually turns around and takes 3 steps backwards. That can be a pretty annoying thing to have happen. So you have to be very careful when you're casting abilities that you stay inside that outer circle with the middle point of your spell. You'll note right here is too far out. He broke his movement.
The land and I are one.
Let's just leave that on. But if we do it just inside, he's fine and he doesn't turn around and start heading the other way. So do keep that in mind. Your character will automatically start moving in that direction if you load up your abilities in that way. So you have to be very careful and conscious of where you place abilities in that way. Another thing I want to talk about is pings and how you can actually indicate direction with pings. So you'll notice when I pinged right there, there's these small green arrows on the left that show where my character is and where he's moving. And watch those arrows as you move your character's direction. The arrows move as well. So this ping is actually a constant way to indicate where you're coming from to that point. And you can use this to your advantage. And if it expires, you can continue to cast more pings to show your teammates exactly how you're approaching. If you're a healer who's trying to get to an opponent or to an ally who's almost dead, and they don't know which way to run, say they're coming up here on the tree, right? They're running up towards the tree, and you're on the left, but they don't know for sure which way you're approaching most closely. So they break right accidentally. You can use something like this to tell them, look, I'm over here on the left, not from the right. So head this way. Malfurion's on the way to heal you and save you. You just have to pay attention to the pings. So knowing that can give you an advantage, and using it too can help your teammates. So be conscious of those ping directional indicators. Now you'll note these don't have it, but on the way ping to the right, I'm being punished, but you can see that in action. So another thing I want to talk about is camera following. Some players will have camera following turned on. You can hit the L key to toggle this on and off, and the camera will follow your hero to a certain extent. You won't exactly be able to get out of range of the camera. It'll be pinned basically where your character's in the corners. So some people probably like that just because it's easy to keep track of your character, but in my mind, when the camera's moving like that, it makes it a little bit harder to control your abilities to some extent, because you're always constantly moving. You're basically controlling in multiple axes of directions when placing an ability. If you turn off camera follow, you can you'll know exactly when and how the camera's moving based on your mouse movement. So I think it gives you a little bit more fidelity and control. It makes casting abilities easier, makes scouting ahead easier without your character following along as well. So in my mind, turning off camera follow is always advantageous, because you can also use the space bar to return to your character at any given point and center the location. So even if you do get lost up ahead and you can't quite find your character and you're hectically searching the minimap, you can always just return to center the character that way. I actually don't use spacebar, I use a mouse scroll wheel because it's more convenient for me, and you can set that in your hotkeys. So I also want to talk about Quickcast options. You'll note that I've been using not Quickcast. So in other words, when I hit an ability key, I have a reticule that's brought up that helps me aim the ability where exactly I want it to go, and then I hit the key again to activate the ability. So it takes me 2 key presses. I have to key press and then click to cast. There are actually options in the game that you can change in that way using your targeting Quickcast here in the menu. You can turn Quickcast on, and we'll see that in action. So how this works is, instead of having a targeting reticule, as soon as I press E, the ability is just going to go wherever my mouse is centered. So very skilled players can use this to an advantage, basically limiting their necessary key presses to 1 instead of 2, meaning you can actually get actions off a little bit quicker. Of course, you have to be much more conscious of where your mouse is at all times and have much tighter controls, or you'll miss abilities and not be able to line them up well. You also need to kind of understand the basic reticules and ranges of your abilities as well, or it can really throw you off. So I don't recommend this for newer players, but if you're very skilled mechanically, it's probably going to give you an advantage. There's also an option that's somewhere in the middle, which is Quickcast on release. And this way, you can hit E and it'll cast it virtually instantly with 1 key press, but you can also hold E, and when you let go of E, the ability will be cast. So it doesn't require a mouse click. It just, you press the key and then depress the key to cast the ability. So it's kind of in the middle, and I recommend you play around with all 3 of these methods and determine your favorite and which one makes you the best at the game, and stick with that. If you're really dedicated, you can learn Quickcast, and it's going to be advantageous, but some abilities it's better than others, so keep that in mind depending on the hero and the moment. And until Heroes of the Storm adds customizable Quickcast controls to individual abilities, you might be in a dangerous position to commit to Quickcast. So the next thing I want to talk about is self-casting abilities. If you hold down the Alt key while you press an ability cast, it will cast the ability centered on yourself. You're seeing me do this now with Malfurion. So if you're running as Malfurion, it's hard sometimes to line up your roots exactly at your feet as you cast. But using Alt cast will always center him completely. So sometimes it's just good to do that. You can also heal yourself this way. You can cast a Moonfire on yourself. I don't know why you'd ever want to do that necessarily, but Malfurion may not be the best case scenario here. But knowing that you have the option to self-cast using that Alt plus the key, it gives you more flexibility and control over your abilities and how quickly you can use them and who to target them. And sometimes Alt healing yourself is very fantastic in a hectic team fight. When you're having trouble finding yourself or clicking yourself, or maybe you're off screen and you need to heal anyway and it doesn't require that click. So keep that self-cast in mind. And then the final thing I want to talk about is actually talent placements. You'll notice as Malfurion here, I've picked 4 active talents, and they show up on my bar as 1, 2, 3, and 4. But see, to me, Scouting Drone and Call Down Mule are 2 pretty passive talents. And to me, I think they don't need to be quite as easily accessible for key presses. So using them in the 1 and 2 slot feels like a waste. I'd rather have active abilities like Shrink Ray and Storm Shield a little easier for me to hit, and the 1 and 2 slots are easiest. So you can actually move talents around on this bar. It's a pretty simple trick, but you'd be surprised how many people don't realize these can actually be moved. So keep in mind which abilities you want most easily accessible, what's most comfortable for you to press, and move these around in ways that suit your own playstyle. That can give you a surprisingly big advantage when it comes to quickness and reaction time when casting something like a shield or a Shrink Ray. So that's it for the Master the Basics controls that I have to offer. I hope you have learned something here in this video. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, game on.